A young doctor defied hospital protocol to save a black billionaire in a coma, and the moment he touched her, she woke up. What followed exposed a shocking conspiracy, a powerful family's betrayal, and a love story no one saw coming. The hallway outside the ICU was dim and quiet, save for the low whir of ventilation and the rhythmic beeping that pulsed from each patient's room. At the far end, fluorescent lights flickered softly, casting a pale wash over the linoleum floors of St. Mark's Medical Center. It was well past midnight. Most of the staff had thinned out. The graveyard shift had settled into a hush. Dr. Jalen Brooks pushed through the double doors of room 217, eyes rimmed with fatigue but focused. His white coat was creased, his collar open, stethoscope slung carelessly around his neck. He'd just completed back-to-back rotations in ER and ICU, but something had been pulling him to this room all night. Savannah Cole lay motionless in the hospital bed, her body dwarfed by white sheets, her dark skin pale beneath the monitor's glow. 6 months in a coma had left her gaunt, her once powerful frame now delicate, almost ghost-like. Her hair, neatly maintained by the aides, curled softly against her temple, but the rest of her looked forgotten. Jalen's jaw clenched as he scanned her. The bandages around her chest hadn't been changed in days. Yellowed, too tight, pressed deep into her skin like they'd been wrapped in haste and never revisited. Her chart showed no recent dressing updates, no sign anyone cared to notice. This isn't right. He moved to the cabinet, grabbed gloves and sterile scissors. Just as he reached for her gown, the door creaked open behind him. "You need to stop, Doctor." "Brooks," said a sharp voice. Nurse Karen McMillan stepped in, arms crossed, her tone clipped. "She's high profile. We follow protocol. You touch her without clearance, you answer to the board." "She's barely breathing under this mess," Jalen said without turning. "I don't care what her net worth is. I care that she's a patient, a human being." Karen's silence lingered, heavy. Jalen leaned in, hands steady, and made the first careful cut. The bandages gave way, revealing red indentations along Savannah's ribs, marks of pressure and neglect. He worked quickly, replacing them with fresh gauze, not too tight this time. His fingers grazed her skin for only a second, warmth against cold. The heart monitor spiked. Karen gasped. Jalen froze. A second beep, then another. Her lips parted slightly. Her eyelid twitched. He stepped closer, barely breathing. "Savannah?" Her left eye fluttered open, slow and unfocused. She was waking up. Jalen couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Savannah's eyelid twitching, the monitor spiking, the faint parting of her lips. It wasn't just a coincidence. Something about it gnawed at him like a splinter lodged deep in his gut. The next morning, still running on adrenaline, he combed through her medical records. 6 months of logs. Vital signs stable. No traumatic brain injury. Just a mild concussion, minor bruising. No swelling. No seizures. Every test pointed to one thing. She should have woken up a long time ago. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. So why hasn't she? That same itch tugged at him. He scanned the nurse logs, medications administered, dressing changes, or lack of them. No sedatives were listed. Nothing that explained her prolonged unresponsiveness. Yet her body didn't match the story the records told. He made his way back to her room that afternoon. Karen wasn't on duty. The wing was quiet. He opened the supply cabinet just outside her door, instinct guiding him more than reason. Bandages, gloves, saline. Then, behind a box of gauze, something caught his eye. A small, half-full glass vial. No label, no barcode. He held it up to the light, his stomach tightening. It looked clear, like saline, but something about the way it was tucked away felt deliberate. Pocketing the vial, he walked briskly to the stairwell and pulled out his phone. "Ryan, you up?" "Barely," came the groggy reply. "It's not even 8. I need you to run a test, off the books." A pause. "What kind of test?" "Sedative analysis. I'll explain later. I'll meet you at the back entrance in 30. Ryan Torres, a junior lab tech, was used to Jalen's late-night chaos. But this had weight. 3 days later, Ryan handed him a printout, eyes wide. "It's a low-dose anesthetic, meant to keep someone in a suppressed state without actually sedating them fully. Not standard. This isn't in any hospital formulary." Jalen felt his breath hitch. Could it keep someone in a coma? Ryan hesitated. Not medically, but if they were already vulnerable, yeah, it could keep them down. Invisible. Jalen stared at the page. Who the hell would do that? The answer came faster than he expected. He returned to Savannah's room. She was stable, breathing steadily. No sign of the brief wake-up, but something in her face looked less hollow, less distant, like something inside her was slowly returning. Jalen logged into the hospital's visitor records. Savannah hadn't had many guests, but one name appeared again and again, always around midnight, always alone. Troy Cole, her younger brother, the man now sitting in Savannah's old chair as acting CEO of Cole Technologies. On paper, he was a charismatic leader, photogenic, articulate, generous. Publicly, he'd pledged to carry his sister's vision forward. But something didn't sit right. 6 months ago, Jalen remembered reading the story. Savannah Cole in critical condition after highway crash. No other vehicles involved. Wet road. Skid marks. No witnesses. She had been driving back from a leadership retreat. The media hailed Troy as the loyal brother stepping up in crisis. The company's stock dipped for a week, then stabilized. Headlines praised his poise. Investors smiled. But now, with everything Jalen had found, those headlines felt like PR fiction. He requested archived security footage from the ICU, bribed a security guard with free coffee and a promise not to involve his name. The footage was grainy, muted, but clear enough. Jalen fast-forwarded through 6 nights of footage. Then, on a rainy Tuesday at 12:41 a.m., he saw it. Troy Cole entering the wing, alone, wearing a black hoodie. He walked straight to the nurse's station. Nurse Melissa Grant was there, looking nervous. Troy reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small glass vial, and handed it to her. She tucked it into her scrubs without looking up. He patted her shoulder. She nodded. Jalen's blood chilled. He grabbed screenshots. Time-stamped everything. Then, later that night, he found Melissa in the break room. She looked up from her sandwich, surprised to see him. "Dr. Brooks," she said. "Everything okay?" He smiled. Friendly. Too friendly. "Can we talk?" They stepped into a storage room. He flipped his phone to voice record, tucked it into his coat pocket. "I need to ask you something, Melissa." Off the record. She blinked, guarded. "About what?" "Troy Cole. I saw the footage." Her face went pale. "I'm not here to ruin your life," he said, lowering his voice. "But I need to know. What was in that vial?" She swallowed. He said, "It was just to help her sleep. He said she wasn't resting well. I didn't question it." "You injected it?" She nodded. "Just a few times. He paid me $5,000. I didn't think she was already in a coma. It didn't seem like a big deal. I didn't know it would go on for months." He let the silence stretch. "Do you know what was in that vial?" She shook her head. "He never told me." Jalen ended the recording. "Thank you." She looked like she wanted to cry. Later that night, he sat in his apartment, heart pounding, spreading everything across the table. The screenshots, the lab report, Melissa's confession. It all pointed to one truth. Savannah Cole wasn't in a coma because of the accident. She'd been put there, on purpose. And now that she was waking up, someone would be desperate to keep her quiet. The pale morning light seeped through the blinds of room 217, casting soft stripes across Savannah Cole's motionless figure. Machines hummed steadily beside her, monitors blinking in rhythm with the slow, steady beat of her heart. Dr. Jalen Brooks stood at her bedside, reviewing vitals for the 3rd time that hour. He hadn't gone home, hadn't even changed his clothes. Something in his gut told him this wasn't the time to leave. Then, movement. Her lashes trembled. Jalen froze. Breath caught in his chest. Her eyes opened. Slow, hazy, unfocused. She blinked once, then again. Her gaze floated across the room like a moth unsure of where to land. Then it found him. Her eyes locked onto Jalen, and something passed between them. Uncertainty, recognition, trust. Her face twitched, subtle and slow, but unmistakably conscious. She was awake. His heart slammed against his ribcage. He stepped closer, barely breathing. "Savannah?" he whispered. She couldn't respond, not with the intubation tube still down her throat, but her gaze didn't break from his. There was life behind her eyes now. Awareness. Fragile, but real. He moved quickly, adjusting the bed to elevate her head, then leaned in. "Can you hear me? Blink once for yes, twice for no. Okay?" A slow, deliberate blink. A rush of relief flooded his chest. "Good," he breathed. "Okay. We're gonna take this one step at a time." Every instinct screamed at him to alert the attending, to report what had just happened. but the evidence he had gathered loomed in the back of his mind. He couldn't trust just anyone. Not yet. He requested a respiratory check under the guise of fluctuating oxygen levels, which allowed them to remove the breathing tube with minimal attention. He stayed by her side the entire time, eyes locked to hers, steady and calm. When the nurses left, Savannah rested her head against the pillow, exhausted but aware. Her eyes followed him around the room as he adjusted monitors and dimmed the harsh overhead light. She blinked once, then once again. "Do you know where you are?" he asked. Blink. "Do you remember the crash?" Blink. A pause. Then a single, sharp blink. "Do you remember someone doing this to you?" Her gaze darkened. She blinked once, slow and deliberate. He stepped closer, voice dropping. "Was it your brother?" Her eyes stayed on his for a long moment. Then she blinked once. He swallowed hard. His fingers gripped the bed rail. That night, he stayed well past the end of his shift, claiming an administrative error to keep the room off the rotation chart. Savannah's recovery for now was their secret. He fed her ice chips slowly, cradling her head gently. Her lips trembled as they sipped from the spoon. She could barely speak, but the words came eventually. Hoarse, slow, but unmistakable. "Why, me?" she rasped. He sat beside her, exhaustion etched in every line of his face. "Because you matter," he said, "and someone had to care." Her lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. In the days that followed, she grew stronger. Jalen rearranged his schedule to cover night shifts exclusively. He rotated her charts, wrote vague notes in her record to keep the staff disinterested. To anyone else, Savannah was still unconscious. To him, she was becoming sharper with every hour. He brought her comforts in secret. Warm cloths to wipe her face, lavender oil for the back of her neck, a pair of Bluetooth earbuds so she could listen to her favorite songs again. He found them by scanning her public interviews, noting the artists she had once named as calming during late coding nights. He read to her too, classics, thrillers, and eventually a crumpled old book of poetry she seemed to enjoy most. One night, when he tried to mimic Shakespeare with a British accent, she let out a faint rasp of a laugh. The sound hit him harder than anything had in months. "You're good at this," she whispered. "What? Butchering old English?" "No." Her eyes met his, soft and serious. "Making me feel alive." There was something in the way she looked at him that night. Not just gratitude, not just relief, something else. He didn't back away from it. "You're not alone in this," he told her, setting the book down. "You were never meant to be." She told him more about Troy, how he resented her success, hated how the media adored her while he stood in the background, how their mother's inheritance had gone to Savannah, and how he'd always blamed her for being the favorite, even though she never asked for it. "He smiled for the world," she said quietly one night. "But at home, when the cameras were off, he barely spoke to me, until I started making headlines. Then he wanted everything." Jalen clenched his fists, but kept his voice steady. "He's not going to get another inch. Not while I'm here." One night, Savannah struggled to sit up. He rushed over, steadying her with both hands. "Let me," he murmured, adjusting her pillow. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his wrist. Then they slid into his hand, gentle, uncertain. He looked down, startled, but didn't pull away. She didn't let go. They sat like that for a long time, fingers intertwined. No words needed. The monitors beeped softly around them, the only sound in the room. And for the first time since she'd opened her eyes, Savannah didn't feel like a patient. She felt seen. The next night, she made it through 5 minutes of sitting up unaided. Jalen beamed, more proud than he thought possible. "You're unstoppable," he said, crouching next to her as she steadied herself. "I had to be," she whispered. "No one ever fought for me. Not really. You have me now." She didn't speak, just nodded slowly, tears welling at the corners of her eyes. Her recovery wasn't just about muscle or speech. It was about trust. It was about finding her voice again, one blink, one breath, one fragile moment at a time. And now, sitting side by side, their fingers laced together, the line between survival and connection had blurred completely. She wasn't alone. Neither was he. And neither of them would ever be the same again. The buzz started days before the trial. News vans circled the front of the courthouse. Bloggers and anchors speculated nonstop. Is Savannah Cole really awake? Will she testify? What secrets lie behind her 6-month silence? Inside St. Mark's Medical Center, Savannah stood in front of a mirror, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the collar of her fitted black blazer. She no longer looked like the woman who had once been wrapped in hospital gauze and forgotten in a sterile room. Her posture was strong, her eyes sharp. The cane she'd trained with for weeks leaned quietly in the corner. She wouldn't be needing it today. Jalen stood behind her, adjusting his tie, though he wasn't even required to wear one. He wasn't part of the legal team. Just her doctor. Just the man who saved her. But somehow, his presence had become essential. "You ready?" he asked, eyes catching hers in the reflection. Savannah nodded slowly. "More than I've ever been." They stepped out into the morning glare. Cameras popped instantly, reporters shouting her name. But Savannah didn't flinch. She walked straight through the crowd. Jalen a step behind, his hand resting lightly at her back. Inside the courtroom, the tension was electric. Troy Cole sat at the defendant's table, immaculately dressed in a navy suit, his jaw tight, but his smile casual. He glanced over at his sister and gave her a subtle nod, the kind that tried to say, "This is just business." Savannah didn't return it. She took her seat beside attorney Danielle Reed, who calmly unzipped her folder and organized the day's evidence with surgical precision. "Let's burn this down," Danielle murmured without looking up. The courtroom filled fast. Investors, press, former employees of Cole Technologies, all of them watching history unfold. The prosecution wasted no time. Exhibit A. Security footage from the hospital. Troy entering the ICU late at night, handing something small to nurse Melissa Grant. Exhibit B. The vial, now in evidence, tested and confirmed as a non-therapeutic sedative. Exhibit C. Melissa's audio confession, her voice shaky but clear, playing over the speakers. "He said it would help her sleep. He gave me $5,000. I didn't know it would go on this long." Troy's smirk faded by the second. His fingers drummed against the table. His lawyer whispered rapidly into his ear. But then, Savannah rose. Whispers surged through the room. She walked, unaided, to the witness stand, each step a strike against everything Troy had orchestrated. Danielle's voice was calm. "State your name for the court." "Savannah Marie Cole," she said, her voice steady, clear. "You've been in a coma for 6 months?" A pause. "I was supposed to be in a coma," she answered. "But I wasn't. Not really. I was awake. Inside. And I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Because someone drugged me." The courtroom held its breath. She continued, her voice never trembling. "I wasn't in a coma. I was silenced." Danielle let the words settle, then asked, "Do you know who was responsible?" Savannah didn't hesitate. "Yes. My brother." Troy's defense lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection." The judge, a silver-haired woman known for zero tolerance, cut him off. "Sit down. Continue, Miss Cole." Savannah recounted it all. The crash. The vague memories of her brother in her room. His hands on the fourth line. The faint scent of his cologne. The darkness that swallowed her over and over, whenever she tried to come up for air. Jalen watched from the gallery, chest tight with pride. Troy's lawyer tried to spin it, called her recollections faulty, blamed hospital negligence, claimed the footage was circumstantial, and Melissa unreliable. But the judge wasn't buying it. The prosecution played one final clip, a voicemail Troy had left for a family friend days after Savannah's crash. "She'll be out of commission for a while. I'm taking care of things now. Her team needs direction. I'm stepping in." It was enough. The verdict came just before noon. The jury didn't take long. "Guilty." Troy's face dropped. His jaw clenched. The bailiff stepped forward with cuffs. Gasps echoed as they locked around his wrists. Savannah exhaled slowly, the breath she'd been holding for 6 months. She turned to Jalen in the gallery and gave the smallest of nods. But outside the courthouse, the air was heavier. The press swarmed. Reporters shouted questions, jostling for angles. Savannah and Jalen emerged side by side, flanked by security. The sun was high now, and the courthouse steps gleamed under the camera's flashes. Then, chaos. A figure broke through the crowd. Tall, broad, face hidden beneath a hoodie, a glint of silver in his hand. "Savannah, down!" Jalen shouted. He lunged in front of her just as the man charged. A blade flashed. Pain seared through Jalen's side as the knife slashed across his ribs. He grunted but didn't fall, wrestling the attacker to the ground. Security piled on, dragging the man away as the crowd screamed. Savannah dropped to her knees beside Jalen, hands shaking, pressing her scarf against the spreading red stain on his shirt. "Jalen!" she cried, voice cracking. "Stay with me!" His eyes fluttered, jaw clenched. "Just a scratch," he muttered, voice thin. "Don't you dare lie to me," she whispered. her hands trembling as she pressed down harder. Paramedics shoved through the crowd. Cameras caught everything. The blood, the screams, her desperation. But Savannah didn't care. She held his hand all the way into the ambulance, never letting go. Not once. That night, as the story exploded across the country, headlines, breaking news alerts, viral clips, Savannah sat in a hospital waiting room, her blazer stained with his blood, her phone ignored in her lap. Reporters wanted a statement. Investors were calling. Legal teams were buzzing. But she had only one priority now: Jalen. And she wasn't going anywhere. The lights in the hospital room were soft, almost golden from the low-hanging sun bleeding through the blinds. Jalen lay still in the bed, hooked up to an IV, his side tightly bandaged, the monitor beside him beeping in a lazy rhythm. For once, he wasn't pacing a hallway or hunched over a patient's chart. He was the one being watched over. The door creaked open quietly. Savannah stepped inside. Alone. No lawyers, no press, no security detail. Just her. In her hand, she carried a small bowl of water and a folded cloth. Her heels echoed softly on the tile as she reached the side of his bed. For a long moment, she just looked at him, taking in the bruises, the pale cast of his skin, the calm in his face. Her tough exterior cracked just a little. "You're stubborn," she said softly, dipping the cloth in water. "You were supposed to duck." Jalen stirred, eyes fluttering open. "I did," he rasped, voice hoarse but smiling. "Just not fast enough." She sat down beside him and gently wiped his brow with the cloth. Her fingers moved with care, almost reverence. "You scared me," she whispered. "I can't lose you." He met her eyes. "You won't," he said. "I'd take 100 cuts for you." She leaned forward until their foreheads touched, eyes closed, breaths sinking. No more words. Nothing else needed to be said. 2 weeks later, the press conference was standing room only. Cameras lined the walls, every major outlet watching as Savannah stepped to the podium in a white blouse and gray blazer. Composed, radiant, unflinching. She looked straight into the cameras. "There's been a lot of talk," she began. "About power, about money, about betrayal. But let me tell you what really happened. Dr. Jalen Brooks didn't just save my life. He gave me a reason to fight for it." Gasps echoed through the room. Then applause. Not polite, thunderous. The headlines the next morning were brutal and beautiful all at once. "Billionaire heiress falls for her savior." "The doctor who took down an empire." Tabloids dubbed him her bodyguard boyfriend. She shut them down with one post. "He's not my bodyguard. He's my anchor." 3 months later, a modest ribbon-cutting ceremony took place on a quiet Chicago block. No red carpet. No press frenzy. Just a crowd of neighbors, patients, and friends clapping as the doors opened to the Colbrooks Community Health Center. Free care. No insurance required. That evening, Jalen and Savannah sat on the porch of the clinic, sipping coffee in mismatched mugs. The sky above them blazed in pink and orange, kids playing basketball across the street, laughter echoing through the neighborhood. Her hand slid into his. "Worth it?" she asked. Jalen smiled, gaze fixed on the horizon. Every second, she leaned in. They kissed, not for the cameras, not for a headline, but for the life they'd earned. Love, louder than betrayal, always.